right. Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the UWI.Film program building. And today we are having our Meet the Practitioner series. It is a series dedicated and created by Film TT in collaboration with the UWI.Film program. We thank you for your patience, and we do apologize for the late start. And today we're going to feature quite a lot of interesting conversations, workshops, ideas with our host, Miss Sonja Dumas. But before we get into our workshop, we have a few words by our coordinator of the BA in Film, Dr. Yao Ramasa.
Thank you so much for your patience and welcome to today's proceedings. This is with immense pleasure that we have collaborated, and we welcome, of course, Film TT to our humble film degree program facilities. And I want to say a special welcome to Sonja, who I knew from the last century as maestra in dance and choreography, but of late she has blossomed and flourished as an award-winning filmmaker. So it's indeed a pleasure and a privilege to welcome her to share her thoughts and ideas and experience as a film practitioner with you. I'd also like to recognize and welcome the general manager of Film TT, Leslie-Ann Wills-Keaton, who's going to have a few words. 2 words, she says. Brevity with you. So thanks a lot for coming. Enjoy and, get as much as you can and give as much as you can, and we'll have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Leslie-Ann.
Have fun.
I have some people you need to write speeches for, okay? Because keep it short. Good day, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be back here. Thank you to UWI, thank you to Film TT, and thank you to you all. And the first order of business is to actually get you or ask you to do a little exercise. Now, in the brief for this session, I had asked people to come in with a fully charged or properly charged smartphone with some memories that you could kind of access and so forth. And so what I'm going to ask you now to do for the next 10 minutes is I'm going to ask you to go outside wherever you want, be safe, but wherever you want, and come back in 10 minutes. As I say, not 10 US, okay, 10 TT minutes. And come in, look at things in the environment that you find yourself in, and take either short videos, like maybe just about a few seconds, 5 seconds or whatever, or still shots. And I want you to take at least, for each minute, you have 1 image. So you're out for 10 minutes, you have 10 images. And it's just what strikes you. That's all I'm going to say. What strikes you as worth being in your camera, all right? So we are at 1:25, and I'll see you at 1:35. images in a little while. You took them at this point for a reason, clearly, right? I just wanted to give you full disclosure. This presentation is a kind of riff off of something I did for the University of Guyana last year. But that one spoke about Caribbean imagination, right? Not just Trinidad and Tobago. We're very focused on Trinidad and Tobago here, although I do refer to some other countries, etc. But just to let you know, I call that one Was the Scene. And that was actually more not about film alone, but about different ways of imagining and presenting stuff in the Caribbean context. So what does the term aesthetics mean? Okay. Anybody want to take a stab at that? You all need lunch. I need lunch too, I know. The visuals, the themes, they look, yes, yes. What's pleasing to the eye, yeah. Anybody else? It's a very, I won't say complicated word, but it is a word, it's a charged word, let's put it that way, all right? When it comes to creating. And everything that everyone said here is correct. I mean, I have no objection to what is being said. Anybody know where this location is? Macarip, correct. This is a scene from one of my short films. This one is from Life and Death. The name of the film is Life and Death. And just so you know, just a small housekeeping note, two things. One, that most of the images, still images that you see, if you don't see a credit, it's because it's mine and I was just too lazy to put my name on it. And the others I've tried to credit. If you have any questions about any image that you see, please let me know. And then the way we did it last time is that we have a time for questions and answers and a time for breaks. So we will be having breaks because it is a long session. So here's my take on aesthetics, right? I don't have a solid definition, but I have thoughts about it. And it considers artistic taste. It places value on certain constructions of imagery, how you put a scene together. Okay, what do you leave in? What do you leave out? Why? And it considers the notion of beauty or visual relevance. So beauty does not have to be the only thing that you consider. It's visual. Is it visually relevant to your film? Okay. Do you set your film in McDonald's? Do you set your film in La Vega Estate? Where do you set your film and why? Okay, what is it about that setting that aesthetically will support the film and the film's message or the film's theme or what have you, right? But there's something more than that as well, because you're looking at what it is that makes your film unique, and that comes back to identity in a sense. And if you're talking about Trinidad and Tobago, we have to look at the aesthetics of Trinidad and Tobago if you're making that kind of film. If you've flown to Hollywood and you're making a blockbuster, the next, I don't know, Marvel character to come out or whatever, that's a whole different aesthetic, unless it's set in Trinidad and Tobago, in which case the aesthetics of Trinidad and Tobago will have to be predominant, right? So it's about place, it's about space, it's about how you define and how you give meaning, which is very important, how you give meaning to the images or the objects or the scenarios that you present. What does it have? What meaning does it have for you? What meaning does it have? What visual meaning? And what oral meaning? What sonic meaning? Because it's also, aesthetics is not just necessarily about looking, it's about also hearing. We have the aesthetics of soca. It's very different from the aesthetics of classical music, right? So that aesthetics also can go into different areas of creativity. It's not just about, it tends to be about the visual, but there are also these other types of ways of understanding how you construct the scenarios that you want, the environments or the ecosystems that you want. So for me, when you're talking about aesthetics, you're talking about form and or subject matter. So form would be things like nature, light, sound. Subject matter would be things like history and culture or circumstances, okay? So, and there are many more. Of course, you know, people have like degrees in aesthetics. I can't get into everything that there is right now. But the fact is, I think we can locate our kind of Caribbean space, our Trinidad and Tobago space, in these kinds of concepts and constructs, right? So form and subject matter. So how you approach, how you light it, what sound you give it, whatever, but and also are you representing something particularly cultural that you want to also show, okay? You can do the two things at the same time, clearly, and you probably have to because that is the nature of film. So these are very few examples, very few. I mean, you know, it's countless that we can get. And because it's carnival time, most of my stuff was about carnival, right? Examples of TNT imagery, which then start to govern our aesthetic sensibility. Because these are the things that we are accustomed to. We invest a kind of value on them because they're in our culture. And they're visual or they're oral. Okay, so carnival. We know that character. We may not know the person, but we know the character, and we accept it. In another culture, they won't know what that is, all right? Or they'll think it's something from the Native American culture. They won't understand the connection between that and Trinidad and Tobago, right? But we will see that and understand it. So there's a kind of shared understanding of the aesthetics of that. We also know that aesthetic. Where's the quote-unquote pretty mass, okay? Everybody having a good time. It's not as painted, okay? But it's a different type of aesthetic that we understand in our environment. So too is this, traditional mass, sailors. And so too is this. And again, if someone were to encounter someone who's not from this space, and even if you don't participate in carnival, and you don't like Blue Devils, and you don't like carnival, you still know what that is. And you still understand and invest in it a kind of meaning. Whether you like it or not is not the actual thing that's important. Whether you understand it within the context of your culture is what's important. Somebody else coming, a visitor, for instance, might come. A Blue Devil might approach, well, it happened actually to my cousin the other day. And she was here on some business meeting or whatever. She understood, because she didn't grow up in Trinidad and Tobago, but she understood the Blue Devils. Her colleague did not, and didn't know what to do when the devil was like, give me money, give me money, give me money. And she's like, I don't have, what to do, right? So again, she didn't know. But we would know what to do, for the most part. Even if it were to walk away from the devil, or to pay the devil as you know, that's the kind of tradition of it and so forth. So those are the kinds of carnival images. I took this one Juve morning because I just found it was funny, right? Clearly the color of the year, of that particular year, was blue in that particular band, which I always storm, which I won't mention because I always storm. And so these are different kinds of shoes, and that's an aesthetic as well, all right? So those are the kinds of things. Like if you wanted a close-up of some kind of intrigue, you could maybe choose that for one of your shots or what have you, because it is true to that form, but it's a different point of view. It's not showing, you know, the Juve paint on the person, but it's showing the Juve paint and the location without actually sort of hitting you over the head with it. The one on the right, before COVID, I used to go to a lot of regional carnivals, and the one on the right is Moko Jambi from, I think it was Chaguanas also, I'm not sure, somewhere in Central. And then the one on the left, is a Moko Jambi from the 1940s. So I always like to make those kinds of comparative analyses because I find, in terms of aesthetics, because when I want to set a film or something in a context, historical context, I understand what I'm talking about. The Moko Jambi of 1940 is not the Moko Jambi of 2014, which is, I think, when I took that shot, right? So, but it's the same principle of a towering figure that we all understand. It's just a very different way of representing the figure, but it's in the same society, it's in the same culture. Another one for Carnival often is limbo. It wasn't done only in Carnival. In fact, limbo, well, you tell me. Let me see if you know what the origin of limbo is. Limbo, limbo like me. Nobody know? This is such a silent group. Oh my God. Best Village took it from somewhere else. Where did Best Village take it from? All right, so limbo is a funerary dance. It is done when somebody has died. That was the original context of it for Trinidad and Tobago, okay? Or not even Tobago, mostly Trinidad, to be quite honest, because it's not really found in Tobago. And limbo, for those of you who might be familiar with the Christian canon of information, limbo is that place between heaven and hell, where you have to stay after you die, right? So what happened was that there was an African practice. Well, one can only put it back to the African practice. One hasn't seen it in any other strains from anywhere else at this point. But it's very strange that limbo only landed in Trinidad. As I said, not even in Tobago. So one wonders how it really came to be. But it is the bending of the body below a bar. Now, most of the time, in contemporary limbo, what happens is that the bar starts off high and you go down low, and it's a how low can you go thing. In the tradition of limbo, it is the complete opposite, because you're taking the person from purgatory up to heaven, okay? So the bar goes higher all the time, all right? And that used to happen in little villages, etc., all over Trinidad and Tobago, all over. Somebody was telling me about one in Claxton Bay, an older lady, she's passed now. It tended to happen, as I said, as a kind of traditional funerary practice that went along with this kind of Christian construct of heaven and hell, okay? So they fused the African practice of this limbo, which again it may have origins in the Bantu region of Africa, which is the sort of southwest part of it. It's below West Africa, below the Nigeria, the bump of Africa. It's a little lower. It's not as low as South Africa, so it's in between there. And it may have come from their cosmology, because there's a very specific Bantu cosmology that is recorded. And then it might have come from there because they have some sort of a crossroads cosmology, similar to, in thinking, to the limbo of the Christian cosmology. But back in what happened, now who flipped the script on that? It was when World War II came. And a lot of Americans came down here because they occupied Chaguaramas as a point of strategy to keep the bad guys away, I guess. And a lot of acts, a lot of small groups who were performing decided to make limbo into a cabaret act. Nobody knows who actually went and said, okay, let's do it from high to low instead of low to high. But it becomes more exciting because what happens, it's more entertainment driven that way, right? So, because if you come up to the high thing and you've already done the low, that's not exciting. If you're going from the high and you're going down low, and how low can you go, that becomes a challenge and becomes something that somebody's like, people who want to be entertained want to see. So that's how it became that kind of cabaret act that we see now. It became very popular post-war in the United States. Chubby Checker, a very famous rock and roll artist, started or had a I think he had a song. He did have a song called Limbo Rock. Okay, and they were trying to make limbo the next big dance. It didn't happen because limbo's too hard. Okay, there are only certain people with strength enough in their backs and their knees to be able to do the limbo down to that level. But even today, you have especially, I guess it would have started in Hawaii, but come into the mainland as well, you have these hula parties, right? And everybody has this stick, and it's a how low can you go thing, but it came from our funerary practice, okay? So that's a long, long explanation of limbo, but at least now you know. And as I said, this is something, in fact, I saw this last night as a kind of interim act for the stick fighting that was going on. So they came in at halftime. The limbo artists came in, they did their dance, and then they left. But that is one of the other things, again, that we know to be in our aesthetic world. We understand that, right? So somebody from Russia may not understand that, and we can explain it to them because it's within our aesthetic field. And this one I just put in because I just love it. The Prime Minister, okay? I like the play on words, and there's also something about that aesthetic. That particular type of painting of a sign or that kind of signage is something that has been very prominent in Trinidad and Tobago for the last 40 years. A lot of small fetes and things, SWWT fet, this kind of fets, whatever fet, they used to have people to actually paint these things, and it became part of our aesthetic landscape. So it's not necessarily that it's all high and mighty and glittery. The fact is that there are things in our purview that become part of our way of thinking and way of seeing, okay? And that is how, again, this, I think, has persevered. I don't know why, but I'm happy it has because it's kind of our thing. I have never seen it anywhere else in the world. Not to say it doesn't exist, but I've never seen it, right? So it becomes very unique to Trinidad and Tobago. Then we have nature. There's a picture I took of a woman near the sea. She was praying. She is a Baptist. And I just thought that she was absolutely beautiful because there's nothing else around her but water, okay? And there are two bodies, large bodies of water around us, so that must become part of our aesthetic sensibility. We have no choice. We are bound by water, right? This one is a screenshot from another film of mine called Agua Water Low. It was shot at the mouth of the Yarra River up in Blanchisseuse. A little tidbit, the dancers were quarreling because fish were nibbling at their feet when we were doing it. Sonja, I said, stay right there for me, please. Thank you very much. All right? Until we're done. And they had good fun with it. But basically, again, a lot of my exploration is about water simply because we are bound by water. And that has to, even if you don't have any water in your film, understand that you come from a place that has this energy of water around it, okay? Now, can you tell which one is Trinidad and Tobago and which one is not? The left is Trinidad, exactly. Why is the right one not? Not even in Tobago, you think? What's different? Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly right. What happened is the one on the left is, I think it is, I can't remember. I think it's Celibia, somewhere up on that side, right? And not the small section of the Celibia Beach. When you cross the river and you go on the other side, I think that's where I took it. And then this one I took in the Bahamas, not Grand Bahama. We went out to an island, and it was almost seamless. Like the sand just turned into the water. It seemed like there was not even a dip. It just seemed like one thing. And again, it was something that I realized is not what I see in my aesthetic space. So even beaches, you can't assume that all beaches are alike, okay? What is your beach as opposed to somebody else's? That's where your aesthetic sensibility comes in. What about this? Where do you think these pictures were taken? The one on the right. That's right. Bingo. Okay. What strikes you about both of those pictures, though? I hear no whisper. The nature scenery of it. Be a little more specific. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What I would say, that's all true. What I would say is the density, okay, in terms of the greenery and how dense it is. In the tropical environment, what happens is that, especially the tropical rainforest environment, even though you're not on this side in the rainforest, you're in a garden that is extremely lush. We take it for granted, but a lot of people don't get to see that kind of thing. Okay, same thing on my right, on my left, right? You have a very dense set of flora that only the tropical environment enjoys, really. Okay, so again, in terms of aesthetic, think about the fact that you live in this very green, rich place, okay, that some people just don't have access to. Well, these are segueing onto something else now, because these are images from the Cloth. I think it was the website I took it from. The Cloth is a fashion design company that has been around since, I think, the late 80s or so, or early 90s, I can't remember. It's run by a designer called Robert Young, who some of you may know. And he has, to me, to my mind, has, throughout the time of his career, which is not over because he's still doing a lot of stuff with fashion, has tried his very best to create an indigenous look to his garments. You should go on the website and look at some of his older garments as well. He's kind of turned a corner now. He doesn't do such colorful garments anymore. He does more monotone and so forth, because guess why? Because he's expanded to the international market, and the international market and color are two different things. I'm going to get to that in a little while as well. Again, because of the light, the way that our flora and, our flora specifically, not so much the fauna, but the flora blossoms, it's intense color. And if you go to another or a temperate region or iced region or what have you, you're not going to see that kind of, they don't survive in those environments. All right, so that the color that we are used to and that we repeat and we regurgitate in our painting, in our design, etc., reflects the aesthetics of our environment yet again. So on one hand, we have a very intense sort of banana flower and the bananas themselves. And here we have the cocoa pods, right? Again, things that we recognize and we take for granted. But all those little things that you take for granted make up your aesthetic DNA, all right? So this is how he's used it. If you look at those colors and that kind of palette, okay, he's taken the green and he's made something from it. Now, yes, of course, that green is accessible to anybody, anywhere, in the world. Yes, I understand that. But that's where his process is coming from. Okay, he's using what is around him. Here's another shot of it. Again, that burst of color is what tends to, your eye tends to gravitate because it's so different from the rest of everything else around it. I think they shot this down in either the Pitch Lake or somewhere, I can't remember. This was a few years ago. This was an experiment. This is not fashion. He wasn't expecting anybody to wear that, right? But it was, he also does mass. He does a lot of conceptual mass. So this is one of his mass efforts, okay? In that, you can see a lot of other kinds of tropes coming out. You can see the whole idea of masking, of mystery, of magical realism, which is a term that really refers to using, this happens in literature, it happens in film, that whole notion of having a story. You're telling the story, but you're telling the story in a sort of real zone, but also a fantasy zone, okay? It's not a fantasy, the story is not a fantasy, but it is magical realism because it combines the two. It usually errs on the side of the reality, and so you have a little bit of fantasy coming in, okay? But it's different from that whole notion of sci-fi or anything like that. It's not quite that. So why is this important? Why is engagement with aesthetics important? We've been over a few of those ideas already. Because film is a visual and sonic medium, as we had said the last time. It's a unique visual and sound, a unique visual and sound identity is key, so that the more unique, in my opinion at least, and from what I've seen from the efforts from our spaces, our Caribbean spaces, the more unique you are, the more authentic you are to your own culture, the more it looks, the more people pay attention because that's something that is different to them. I had mentioned some time ago, well, at the last workshop, that there are only very few stories in the world. There are very few stories, right? So the themes of those stories are not going to change. But the way you tell them is what really ups the ante and makes you something that's, your film something that is eligible for wider audiences, okay? And then you have to also understand yourself and community. At least you leave here now knowing a little bit about limbo, all right? And there are things that they're carnival characters. Each of them has, the traditional ones at least, they have their histories, okay? And they have specific, or had specific roles back in the day when they were first created, all right? So there are all these things that come from us, from our forebears, that are part of our own sort of psyche. So I'm going to play 2 short clips for you. Oh, just a note. Again, this is just my observation. It says tasso drumming at Jose's celebrations in St. James. Well, Jose is not a celebration, but it's a commemoration, okay? But that's what YouTube had, so that's what I had to take. However, it is really not. It is a commemoration of the 2 slain brothers, Hassan and Hussein, okay, from the cosmology and from the history of the Muslim community, all right? The drums are played in honor of them. The different nights are enacted in honor of them. The Tajas, the flag night, whatever, that is to honor them and their bravery, okay? So it really should read commemoration. Oops, I escaped to the wrong thing. Let's put this up again. And I'm going to play a second clip. Now you see how they spell that? First point of difference, right? Hoping it comes up here soon. Let me escape and see if I can get it to there. I might have to refresh. Let's see. I guess it doesn't want to play. Come on, one more for the road. Come on, let's go. Let's see if I can find it on YouTube and if it will play there. Let's see. Jose in Jamaica. What's the difference? What's the sound? What's the sound difference? Well, they're all drums that are used in the Muslim tradition. So what I think you observed is the fact that the bass drum, we call it that for now, the bass drum is the one that seems to predominate in the Jamaican, right? Where the smaller, the actual tassa drum tends to be the predominant musical force in the Trinidad and Tobago one. What else? Correct. Right. Well, these days, tassa is now stretched with plastic, a kind of taut plastic, as opposed to the skin that it was before. So they look as if they have the plastic ones there. Yeah. Yeah. You know, when I saw that first, I was really disappointed. I'm like, where's the skin? I want to see that, right? But things move on, right? The other thing is that the configuration of the bass drums. In our tradition, what happens is that the ones with the men with the bass drum are in a line. Okay, it's almost military in terms of how they line up. But here, they're random. And for me, my aesthetic sense is like, no, you need to line up. You need to line up because that's how you're supposed to do it. But it's not how they do it. It's how I do it in my country, right? So those are the kinds of, and the arrangement of the music is also different. Not only are the bass drum given more privilege, the bass drum's given more privilege, but the rhythm is slightly, it's not the same, right? The arrangement is not the same. The tempo might be the same when compared to a fast tassa drumming here, but the actual arrangement is different, so it will sound different to us. The sonic impact on us is different, you see? Right. So that's it. So we're going to take any questions or discussion and have a little discussion. Then I'm going to see some of your images. I want to see what you chose. But any questions or so before? Questions, any comments, any observations? You have any questions about the kind of meaning of aesthetics? I wasn't that clear. You have no questions? That's an excellent question, and the answer is absolutely not. Okay? We don't, when I say that we have to make it look as if it's ours is so much more than beaches, etc., right? I don't know if Film TT knows this, but some years ago, pre-COVID, there was a meeting. I don't know who came down. It was a series of location people who came down. And you know what they were more interested in than anything else? The oil rigs. There was an abandoned oil rig or something so. They said that interested them more than any of the beaches or whatever. They show them Blue Devil, they show them everything, right? But that is also part, I didn't show it here because we don't have enough time to show everything, but the fact is that that is something that might be appealing as a set. Okay, because it's logistical and it's also aesthetic. First of all, they can move around an abandoned set without getting, having to get 1,000,001 permissions. You get one blanket permission, and once it's safe, right, you have your safety protocols in place, you could go anywhere. Secondly, who in the world has an abandoned oil field or oil refinery or whatever? That would be us. Okay? That's very rare. So you don't let them outside of Trinidad and Tobago box you in. What you shouldn't do is do the opposite, which is try to be like them in an inauthentic way. Just be yourself, tell your own story in your own space. Okay? So it doesn't have to be anything about, oh, I have to show sun, sand, and beach and, bikinis. No. All right? In fact, you should probably rail against that. You can show the beach, but is that part of the emotional package of that scene, or is it just that you put it in because you feel they want to see a beach? Right? It shouldn't be the latter. It should be the former. How does that beach scene add to the plot, add to the emotional tension or whatever of the scene? If it doesn't, cut it out and shoot the whole thing in a little office in the back of Carrie Brewery or whatever it is, because maybe that is your aesthetic for that film. Okay?
Sonia, I want to add to that. It was the familiarization tour that Film PT had, where the location managers did come to Trinidad. And she's correct, they were interested in the orderings. And that is something that we've been working on building the relationship with Carrier, is that because it's available, they're not using it right now, and so we're trying to convince them to use that space as a set. They have a church, they have a golf course, a swimming pool, they have everything. It's like a mini set. And so
That's
we build
perfect.
that relationship.
Yeah.
And
Every filmmaker wants to know.
it's perfect. So it's a process though. So we have started the conversation, and even in Point Fortin, they have all these aesthetics that you don't see on film. And this is why the foreigners were so interested in it. They were interested in our length. They wanted long roadways and, of course, the oil industry. So yes, we took the note. And
Yes.
it's a process, but we are working on it.
Right. I wasn't sure if you were there at the time. Didn't remember. Yes. Right. But yeah, so, that there's a great possibility there, because if you want to build a soundstage or, whatever it is, and without having to be so worried about, okay, well, we need to get out of here in 2 weeks because, somebody's going to need it for actual operations and so forth. So those are the kinds of good things that we have. Anybody else? Any comment, any question, anything? No? Okay, so we're going to wrap up this segment of it. It is 2:23. So you're going to take a little 10-minute break. I say 10 this time, it's usually 5, but I say 10 because I want to change over some stuff. I'm going to ask the technical people so that we can hook your phone up to this so we can see your images, okay? So just take a little break. Not everybody's, we won't be able to see everybody's, but certainly we'll want to see what you've chosen. And of course, why had you do that before? I didn't want what I said to influence what you shot. I wanted to see what you naturally shoot, what you're naturally drawn to. And then you now, within the context of all these stuff that we've just been talking about, can see, okay, so I like this because, or you become more critical of your own way of seeing. Okay? Okay, so I'll see you in 10. Now, while we're waiting for people to send me their images that they took, we're going to talk a little bit about light and color. On the left is a picture I took of QRC around 5 p.m. last year sometime for a project. On the right, I know it's a little pixelated, but it is a very famous Italian painter who used to paint a lot of, in fact, it's because of him that we have a lot of imagery from of the Caribbean for the 19th century. I think it's 18th into 19th century. I can't remember exactly when he painted. His name is Agostino Brunaias, and this is one of his paintings, right? From, I guess, the 1800s or so, or the 1700s of the Caribbean. Now, you'll see the similarities are that it is, that again, in the tropical space, there's this presence of trees, even if it's not a lot of trees, right? There's this presence of trees that go in harmony with the buildings, the built culture, if you want, right? The built heritage of the space. What you don't see that clearly here is that the one on the left, on the right, your right, is a daytime shot. It's not 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it's probably earlier. But the palette you can see, even though it's blurry, and that is it's a much more muted palette. So the European eye looks at the tropical environment and interprets it in its European way. Okay? At least back in those days. Here, at 5 p.m., it's brighter than it is in the middle of the day there. Okay? So that, again, it's about your own aesthetic perception, and then it's also colonial assumptions about what they see and colonial assumptions about what they can sell. So if it's too bright, they can't sell it, because it's harsh on the eye of a European gaze because they're not accustomed to it. Whereas this would be bland on the eyes of the Caribbean gaze because it's too muted. Exactly. That is it. You see, the seasoning and the taste buds. So again, light has a lot to do with how we formulate our aesthetic and how we produce what we produce, be it in film or otherwise. Same thing here. It's all very bright. That's Tobago, Pigeon Point, and that is it Belmont that I took this in? I can't remember. Around Woodbrook or so. St. James, right? The thing is, again, we all recognize this. It's something that is home to us in the sense, even if we don't live there, because we understand the gingerbread aesthetic, which I think is, like, quite honestly, quite an amazing one in terms of engineering. When you think about things like Demerara windows that were put, the jalousie windows, etc., that were made so that breeze could come through. It's really a feat of engineering and of beauty, right? But they're disappearing, unfortunately, too fast, but there are still some gingerbread houses around. But again, check the light, the brilliant light of the Caribbean. This woman, her name it is still Althea McNeish. She died in 2020. Probably nobody has heard of her here. And this is something a point of reference that I wanted to also bring up here in terms of looking at aesthetics. Althea McNeish was a Trinidadian. She went to England and she made her mark as a designer, mostly of fabric. Okay, and they had a retrospective on her life about a few months ago. It ended, maybe it's ended in September, at one of the most prestigious institutions of art in the United Kingdom called the V&A. The V&A stands for Victoria and Albert, right? Because it was established by probably Queen Victoria and King Albert or whoever, whatever, right? And so you understand how esteemed it is to have something there. And why she was celebrated is because she kind of broke the mold on patterns and designing, especially with the use of color. And she could only do that because she came from Trinidad and Tobago. Had she been brought up somewhere else, her aesthetic sense would have been different. You can look her up on the online, all right? And she's superimposed over one of her designs, so that kind of proves my point in terms of the brightness of it. She has designed things even for, or she did design things for the Queen of England and other high-profile people in the world. All right, but it's because of her different aesthetic that she GT, so to speak, right? Pardon? Yes, she does look like Nina Simone. That's another example. I quoted the V&A here. It's a tropic dress fabric designed by Atelier McNish for Asher Limited in 1959. That's to tell you how long ago she has been established. She was established. I give that to you partly to kind of refer back to the question that you were asking, is that do we have to look a certain way? No, but you just have to be authentic. When you talk about history, culture, and circumstances, which is what I referred to when I first defined aesthetics, I come back to, now there's lots of schools of thought. There's neorealism, as I mentioned. There's magical realism. There's hyperrealism. There are all sorts of different techniques of imaging your product. Okay, so you can set something in the Caribbean. It can be neorealistic. I have an example there. Neorealism refers to a movement that happened just before, around World War II and just after, in Europe, where, especially in the Italian film school, they were talking about, they wanted to look at the common man because they were experiencing, it wasn't over, they were experiencing the ravages of the Second World War, and they wanted to bring attention to the plight of the ones who were not as lucky as those who were rich or who could escape the war or what have you. So they began this movement where they looked at the common person, okay, and the challenges faced for survival of that common and usually urban person. Okay, so that's neorealism in that Italian school kind of thing. So you have in Haiti in the 1940s, I believe. No, sorry, not in the 1940s. I think it was in the 1970s it began. I'm not quite sure about the dates, but essentially there was a group of artisans that decided that their intuitive art, anybody has a sense of what I mean by intuitive art? When you look at this, what do you think intuitive might mean? You could guess. Not classically trained. Intuition, you go on your intuition, you go on your gut. That's what they did here, okay? They constructed imagery from their surroundings, all right? And a lot of it was very flat. A lot of Haitian art is very flat. It's not, you don't see a lot of perspective or depth with it. But that's deliberate because of these schools of art. The first and most famous of which was Saint-Soleil, okay? So what they did is they decided to craft or to take some of the aesthetics around them, including their voodoo culture, the voodoo culture, their environment, okay, and also their imagination to create different types of imagery together. So it was a school of art. Okay, it was a series of people thinking with the same philosophy who, yes, they produced separate things and different types of different subjects in their art, but the fact is that they had a sensibility that was shared, okay, in terms of what the aesthetics of that art should have looked like. And this person, Prosper Pierre-Louis, he was one of the most famous painters from the Saint-Soleil school. So even in the Caribbean, you tend to think of schools of art as being in Europe and so. Yes, but we have it here too, okay, in the Caribbean. And with the same intent, to promote a certain type of art because of the philosophy behind it, and to promote a certain type of look aesthetically, okay, and philosophically. All right, let me see, I'll check. I'm going to check my phone to see if it's come in, and then if it has, we'll go to the images. But I just wanted to look at more Trinidad and Tobago films, getting it back to film. And you have BIM, which is probably one of our most, it's probably our most famous film, okay, from 1974. And anybody recognize the person on the right? Say it loud and proud. Ralph Mirage, right, Ralph Mirage. He was an actor in those days, and he was the protagonist of BIM. It's not online. BIM is a very closely guarded product, although you can get it now, I think, via DVD. I didn't see the whole film on DVD, no, on YouTube. I saw it, I think the last saleable form I saw it in, or shareable form, was in the form of a DVD many years ago when they were selling it. It might be, you could purchase it online now, I'm not sure. So what I did is I had, talking about, remember, sound being important as well. Comments, observations? Nothing. Very Caribbean, yes. Right. It's almost like a lavway, almost, right? It's a ballad, as many calypsos are, right? Commenting on his life and what has happened in it or what is about to happen, right? And it is also, to me, remember this was done in 1974. BIM is it's not a comedy, okay? It's a drama / little bit of thriller, but mainly drama, okay? And it is about one person and his life and how it sort of declined into criminality, etc., etc. But the music doesn't feel that way, all right? But is it a problem, and this is just a rhetorical question, is it a problem that we use our forms of music to describe something that is not necessarily a comedy or a light romantic comedy or whatever, okay? Because in the tradition of storytelling and the tradition of of many of the strains of people who came to Trinidad and Tobago, the commentary in song is not necessarily something that is going to be deep and dark on the surface, but they will be speaking about, or they will be talking about, or they'll be singing about something that's deep and dark. Okay? David Rudder calls that the blade behind the smile. Okay? In one of the documentaries in which he's featured, the blade behind the smile. In other words, I'll be singing to you, so and so and so, but the thing that I'm saying is deadly. Okay? And that's another kind of treatment that we have in terms of the aesthetics of our sonic environment. We have a lot of double entendre, right? Double meaning, sometimes triple meaning. Okay? The famous, well, the one I like to refer to is not famous per se, but something I like to go to. When somebody's sitting by the savannah and you see a woman walking by, or a man, in a pair of white pants, okay? And you know the person, and you say, I like your white pants, man. What does that mean? That could mean about 16 different things. Okay? Your teeth, my white pants. Or you found those pants in somewhere you shouldn't have been. I like your white pants, man. What does that mean? You see? So it has so many meanings. But for somebody from outside, it's like, oh, you like her pants? That's lovely. Okay? They have no idea by the inflection of your voice that you could be accusing that person of something. Okay? All right. Come on, go. Oh, gosh, do I have to escape and come back in? Okay, and here we have Bacchanal Time, which is a time, let me tell you. And you can get this on YouTube as well if you haven't seen it. This is not the full, clearly not the full thing, but it's a little bit of a, oh, this is the full movie. I didn't mean to show the full movie. I don't know why that came up. I wanted to show an excerpt. The snow cone, the old snow cone press. The Hindu wedding. The bell-bottom pants. You know what that was. Right? A kind of market kind of thing that we all can relate to. Cut back to the Hindu wedding. Now, this is a comedy. You can't get too much into it because we have so much more to do, but basically this is a comedy, and in fact, one of the things that I love about it is that it stars, well, you should go and see it, the Calypsonians. I'll just say that, all right? And that's one of the first, I think one of the few times in which Calypsonians have become actors, right, as far as I know. And again, somebody looking at that will not know about those Calypsonians. We will know, and we have a different reaction to it, okay? But this one is on YouTube, so you can just look it up, Bacchanal Time. This is another image from Bacchanal Time here. Anybody know Turn of the Tide? Which is not a film, it's a series. It's an you know, kind of drama series, dramatic series, set in Tobago. Again, notice the lush environment. The sound of pan. Looks like any average upper middle class home.
What's that? A present for Ben. Ben and Teresa. You don't want to get technical. How do you like it? I think he liked that. I'm sure he will, considering the giver.
Tension established.
We'll start that again. I'm sorry. I'm sure they like it.
Length of skirt of the lady.
From what I hear, it's going to be quite a wedding. I expect so. There's a rumor going around. What's that? That Ben got trapped. I don't understand. Well, Ben hasn't been back for very long, and Teresa is pretty big. You are totally despicable. It's just what I heard at the station today. And what else did you hear at the station today? That Teresa used to go driving with a young man from the office. And it's quite a good chance he's the real father. I don't believe that. Neither do I. But you know how Tom gets around.
So I think you can see all of the episodes online. Timmy Mora, I think, has it on Visual Art, his channel Visual Art. So again, it's always good to see these things, to know what has happened in the past, what choices people have made in the past in terms of the aesthetics of the film product that they are trying or have produced. All right, let me see. I should have those things in there now. Sorry, I have to do a little, I have to go, I have a very old system here. I have a new one. Have I had time to change over? No. But if only want to buy me another one, that's fine too. Okay. I get about 100 emails a day. I can't make it, no? I cannot answer all. Okay, I'll take this one. All right, so we will open them. Comments? That's her first image. Not yours? Whose is it? Yours, okay, hi. Do not all shout at once. The feeling I get from that, it's two things. Intimacy, because of the extreme close-up of the shot, right? I get intimacy. I get, yes, some of the tropical, because the green is so intense. And I get fear because of the snail that it is. And the fact that, again, in our space, a snail can mean, not all the time, but most of the time these days, can mean the African snail that is, can cause meningitis, etc., right? So again, it's the aesthetic of that produces fear sometimes. As beautiful as the shot is, there's this kind of, let me hold back a little bit, but that's only for us. Somebody coming from Egypt will just pick up the snail. Hey, I see a snail. Okay? What about that one? You all are filmmakers. Talk to me. What do you think? Analyze it and tell me what you think or what you see. You don't have to say, oh, it's nice, it's not nice. That's not the issue. What do you see? What do you feel? What do you observe? And right. The tones. Tone is very important. If you get the right tone the right first time, you don't have to do any color correction. Hello. Okay. What else? It suggests new growth, the greenery, yes. The one in front, yes. Anything else? So you're looking at symbolism. You see that you can conjure up symbolism as well. There's something technical about it that I find very interesting. Pardon? That's it. There's perspective. It's in your face, yes, but yet you can still digest the back. Okay, so the stalks are right up in front. There's no leeway, really. But because there are openings, you can feel the depth through the picture. Okay? About that one. I'm looking at the symmetry of it as well as the colors, right? There's a literal triangle in the dead center, right? Starts at the bottom, goes straight up. Yes. Yeah. Looking like? A what? A dirt road. Exactly. And maybe in your film, you want to crossfade to that for some reason, okay? Because, and that's an interesting thing about optics and perspective, all right? You're seeing that. Most people would probably see somebody, feel as if they're looking up a tree, but then you can see something else, all right? And the color contrast between the trunk and the leaves also provides that ability to imagine that road. About this. Hmm? Color contrast, yes. Very much so. The fact that the foreground is a little out of focus is also very interesting, because then it privileges the pink, okay? It sends your eye there because the human eye wants clarity, so it will go to the thing that's clearest, okay? And then it's center as well, so you can't help but see it, and it's also the biggest object in the picture. There you go to the existential. You're asking a lot of questions about how it got there, why is it there, why is pink in the middle of the green and the brown? What is the meaning of life? Right? Is that the only one? Oh, this one is, can I rotate it here without opening it? Or did you want it this way? That way? Okay, fine. Sorry, take this away. What do you think about that one? Pardon? A pocket picture. I get a kind of air of hiding and mystery, as if I'm the thing peering around the tree. I take it from that perspective, from me being in this very sort of fuzzy area, and that there's something beyond there that I either do or do not want to see, okay? And then the pattern of the clouds in some way complements or mimics the pattern of the leaves. All right? So you see these speckled areas of the clouds, and you see these sort of speckled areas of the leaves. That's it? That's it, right? Okay, great. We'll give her a round of applause because she was brave. Thank you very much. Let's see. Ooh, wrong. Did anybody else send me? Because I'm not seeing anything. Okay, Heroes TT. That's somebody here? All right, that's you. Okay, great. Comments? What she's done here is really use the rule of thirds for photography, right? Whereas 2/3 of the picture looks at one part of the image and the other third looks at the other. And that's actually a very strong principle of photography, where it's to, again, help the eye focus on what you want the person to focus on, okay? What you want the eye to focus on. So right now, even though there's a kind of grounding of those clouds because of the brick wall, you really see the clouds. That's what you're really looking at, okay? And so in terms of composition, aesthetically, she has definitely followed the path of the rule of thirds of photography. The best advice I got many years ago, when I'd started making films already, somebody said, look, they advise anybody doing film to take a photography course, okay? And that's some of the best advice I ever got. So I did take one. It was here I think it was extramural or something. It wasn't too expensive. And I really learned a lot. I thought I knew a lot until I took that course, okay? So I advise people to do that. And here we have Clouds Alone. How does that speak to you all? Clearly not loudly because nobody's answering. Abstraction, exactly. Okay. Ethereal kinds of atmosphere. And these kinds of images for films or for whatever, those are the kinds of images I like to put on non-traditional surfaces. So it's not necessarily just going to be on a movie screen, it could be on a tree. See how it changes the texture of the tree. So keep thinking experimentally as well. I have to download it. Lordy, Lord. Let me see, you have any more pictures? Okay, I'll download it here. Yeah. The rest of them are videos. I only see 2 pictures here and everything else says vid. So let's see what's going on here. Let's see, I downloaded one thing, so. It's like a dancing Christmas tree. So what do you think about that? What intrigues me and also what puts me off is the fact that it's not straight, okay? That's just my OCD, that has nothing to do with nobody, right? But it's interesting that that kind of thing can make sense for the emotional journey of your plot or your scene, okay? Something isn't quite, it's off, so is the tree. Something is off with the plot, so is the tree. So it becomes a symbol of what the emotional journey of the characters is or whatever, right? Okay, take care. We're doing one more, because I know we're running out of time. It's 3:14. Come on. Oh, I did it twice. Oopsie. That looks, it doesn't even look like a photograph. It looks like some kind of embroidery or something, you know. But there's still depth there with the dark underneath and the light on top. And then you have a focal point of this flower, all right? Now, I want to also encourage people to not necessarily center things all the time. If you look at something called, in photography, called the golden circle, you'll know that sometimes being off is a little better, off center. It actually draws the eye more because the eye goes diagonally into the space of the photograph or the image a little better. But this is, I find this quite fascinating. On my screen, it's a little more defined here, but it almost looks like, you know, as I said, embroidery or something. All right. So let's go back to this. And I'm going to finish off this section quickly. By talking about a few other things. Now, this is a few other films. So this is something called Better Must Come by Storm Salter. She's a very prominent, you need to go? Okay then, thank you. So by Storm Salter, I don't know if anybody knows him, has met him. He's been here at the film festival quite often. Really quite a solid filmmaker. And from Jamaica, found a very interesting model to make films. So they had a collective of filmmakers in Jamaica who would make films, make their money by doing like commercials, etc. But they would lend resources to each other to make short films that they each wanted to make. You see, and I think one of his, The Better Must Come, came out of that. He made his short, maybe 5 minutes long, I don't know. But then he was able to do, you know, little by little, he was able, because he had that kind of proof of concept or teaser or what have you, he was able to get funding to do the film. So it's a kind of collective that I thought was very interesting. Although he did it in 2011, it's set in the 1970s. So it would be interesting to compare, say, the aesthetics of BIM with this, okay? Because they were set in the same era, but they were shot in different times. I just love this shot because it just talks, the breeze breaks, the neighbor talking, the this, the that. It's very Caribbean, okay? Even though it's not a Trinidad and Tobago shot, it's a very Caribbean shot, and I find it's very telling of our environment. Again, the green is prominent, yet again, even though it's an urban space. And again, green being prominent, I think this shot is absolutely beautiful. It's a screenshot again from the film, but it again shows the emotional kind of condition of the person. She's squeezed between these two things, even though one is in the foreground and very soft. There's still that imagery of being squeezed between two worlds or what have you. And again, using our imagery, the basin, the banana leaf, the house that isn't painted, I can't remember what you call those windows, but the glass, the louvers, right? Okay, very Caribbean. And some of you may know him as well. God loves the fight. And I remember I was talking about this whole notion of neorealism and how people went back to, the Italian school at least, went back to this whole notion of let the poor man's story be told. Well, this to me reminds me of that a lot, right? If anybody's seen God Loves the Fighter. And it is also, in a sense, a bit of magical realism, because it shifts between sort of levels of consciousness, right? But this is told from the point of view of someone who is mentally challenged, but tells a story. But he ends up really being more knowledgeable than everybody else, because he can see what has unfolded.
In God's eyes, we were revolting, repulsive creatures. Not a single thing about us deserved anything but condemnation.
When was your last confession, my child?
Hey, can you help us? I have money, I'll pay you. Just take us in that direction.
Not a taxi.
I have money, I'm going to pay you. Just take us.
Not a taxi.
I mentioned for me, but tell me what I'm on disrespect when I even think tonight when you can't see. All you have to do is just move on with the driver.
Driver? 8 pounds of compressed marijuana. Stop. Yeah, international. So we live in.
So this is the gauge, Jack. This is the gauge, no bitter.
Everybody watching with the MC and me. Everybody listening with the MC and me. Everybody listening what? Everybody reporting some shit. Everybody writing something in the newspaper, but they never hear the truth. And that's what they tell me that. Let's go, they can't say.
One between.
The streets have been growing up without you. Going anywhere and I'm afraid I don't go to
Anyone in trouble today?
You don't think the last thing that must more like people getting robbed? I don't know, miss. I'll live here. And then here, echoing Psalm 5, we walk in rebellion against God. And that is when Christ died for us.
Well, yes, my friends. In the streets again, in search of the truth. In search of the truth, I will find it.
So there's a kind of rhapsody rhythm to the whole trailer, right? Yeah. That was a good film. That was really quite searing, right? Got you emotionally. And this is his latest effort, which I don't know if you all saw it would have been at film festival last year. It was the opening film.
This was 7 fucking times what we have here, though. So you're saying, they're telling you 7 fucking times, though. They're telling me, like, this one here with 7 times. I tell you, though. Try to tell me, though.
We make child.
What the ass you mean we make child? Good. My piggy sticking you for that long to make no kind of animal. Skimmer! Skimmer, you wanna make some more money, boy? More than me making now. Yeah, this could be way
It's the Lord's turn. I'm pregnant.
a white woman from fucking somewhere across the world who come here to see it. Give me it.
Who would ever thought you would have become taken with this big fish, boy?
I ain't not trying to be no tinker, Peter.
Just had a kid.
I don't normally do them kind of things, you know.
But I love Skimmer! But I love with Jesus. And you can't go to church with you got anything.
Va bene Venezuela. Corona passport.
Tota bene, papo. Conosce, papico. That is coming for you.
Every fucking day.
Is that such a serial killer?
Maybe thinking about common chicken. Maybe about genetically modified chicken.
I tell us, somebody can't answer. Let me say, fucking answer, yeah? That's something. What is this?
Cheese.
Get down for the soul of a child.
Do you, Skimmer, take Rebecca to be your lawfully wedded wife?
Time to get the fuck out of here. You know what's up? Nah, I'm telling you something. You want to reach out there? Both of them show left on. Let me do all the talking.
Why we can't be tourists too? So we want to do about that. You think? I have a plan. I have a top-end plan.
Sometimes in life, you won't go. You can't walk. You need something.
Well, there's a trailer if ever there was one. What's? Yes. Did you see it?
Actually, the last series that they compared to the family, but actually first episode, right?
Okay.
This film would not have been the same or as impactful if they didn't use the local one and dialect and stuff like that. Had they changed that movies, and that, in my opinion, is what plenty films used to.
Here's what I think. I think it's not that they miss. A lot of films attempt that, but it's the level of authenticity in the acting, which was very strong in Cheese, right? And that tends to be something that we fall down on sometimes because we want to act. Okay, I'm acting. Hello, here's me acting. No, you have to embody the character and be natural and seamless about it, right? But that doesn't always happen. And I don't know what technique of coaching he uses, but it really is successful because they do come off as extremely authentic because of the language, but also because of their timing and their investment in the character.
It's actually a very difficult blend to accomplish because the same thing happens in music. But I used to be, I used to be into hip-hop and all that, and it's a difficult blend to make the accent so palatable on screen, right? Because it's more than just acting of it. I think it's more successful if you let the person acting be yourself instead of trying to pretend to be another character.
Right.
But I know some of the people that personally and they really acting as themselves.
Well, maybe that's why they were cast. I don't know, right? But even when people are cast into a character role that is close to what they are, we tend to want to do the acting thing, and we get very, hyper real about it, right? It becomes caricaturish almost. And I found that they were able to avoid that pitfall consistently, right? Which is why the rhythm of the film, to me, the rhythm is really important. So if you're stilted in your acting, the rhythm is going to be off. And they were very natural, very, very natural. And what's also interesting is that in 2013 or 14, he had done, 2011, sorry, and then into 2021, the boldness with which they were using expletives in a promotion is also something that has, something to note, okay? I'm not sure I would do it because to me it takes away from the audience. It depends on what audience you're going for, but it takes away from a larger audience than it could have, okay? But I understand why they did it because that's the kind of belly of the beast in terms of the characters, etc., That's how they are, that's how they stop, so to speak. But yeah, that's a very interesting development for him. Well, we can either, it is 3:29. I can finish up real fast in 15 minutes, or we can take a break. Which one would you like to do? Let's go? Okay, let's go. Cool. And then we could talk about some other stuff if you want. Okay, so this is another thing. You notice that most of the films that I showed were by men. Okay. So here's a film by a young woman, Maya Kozia, 2021.
You can dance? What is her name? Sparkle? She's still a child. You should come on audition. Sparkle, thanks for coming, eh? This is my room. I love this.
Is he the dancer?
Yo, Skinny wants us to be in his next music video. What? Sparkle, do you have any idea what you're getting yourself into?
And action!
What are you doing?
Dancing like a big shaman.
I'm trying my best.
So thinking about the aesthetics of gender, right? What I'm thinking about is kind of, all right, how do women represent themselves on the screen as opposed to men with the same subject matter? Okay, so that's something to think about. And also, how do they come across, how do these young women come across in terms of challenges, agency, look, feel, whatever? Because I'm sure all of us, if you've ever been to any soca concert or what have you, would know that type of person, a dancer, petite, active, beautiful, on stage, whining, and so forth. This is a backstory to one of them, basically, right? And again, it's told by a female director, and the central figure is female. So when you're thinking about how things are imagined, you can probably look at and compare that to things that went before that were not done by women, but were about women. And that's not the only gender perspective that one can take, clearly. But it's something to think about. I just like this image of all four of them, the four dancers from they're in silhouette, and they basically look like ninjas, right? They don't look like dancers, they look like they're ready to fight you, okay? So there's a kind of agency that they have that is something that she's tried to bring out in the film. And, I have it here and I have it somewhere else too. Yes. This is a home exercise, right? Compare the aesthetics, both form and content, of She Paradise to Dancehall Queen, which is a very similar plot. It was done in 1997 by a Jamaican, and it has a very similar through line. So you'd want to look to see, well, which one, compare and contrast. You're doing all of this, by the way, to understand your own aesthetics. Why are you doing it? Because you want to understand how you approach your aesthetic. Okay, and you want to understand what else is out there. It's available on Apple TV. I think you have to buy it. Okay? Dancehall Queen is online. Here's another aesthetic of gender. Okay? I took this shot, I think, in 2014 or something like that, in Trinidad and Tobago Carnival. So I actually didn't realize that the person was trans until after the fact, after I looked at because I was seeing a woman, right? I was looking at the regalia of her as opposed to her gender, and then I read, oh, okay, different. But that was back in 2014. Since then, we've had a lot of the LGBT community in general have had. When I say we, the world has had that in terms of the traction that the LGBT community has had. So I expect that I will see more people like this in Carnival. Now, we've always had that gender sort of very thin line between genders for Juve, because people dress up. That's a different thing, as far as I understand, from being trans. Okay, it's not, if you dress up as a man and you're a woman or vice versa, that's not being trans, but there's a whole mentality behind trans. And as I said, I didn't realize I was actually shooting somebody who presents as a woman but probably was born as a man. But that's another set of things that are happening inside the mix. And then you have the whining, which is our aesthetic through again, right? How do you deal with that within your film, within whatever? Because, I mean, how much more can you say about whining? Well, I think you have to find it. There's something inside there that is a powerful tool of resistance, of resilience, of self-expression, of self-actualization, what have you, right? I like the one on the right. Because I've covered the people's faces because I don't know, somebody, it might be somebody's cousin or something, and I don't want to get anybody in trouble, okay? But basically, it's an act of transgression, the one, especially the one on the right? What is she doing whining on the police officer? And what is he doing whining back, is what the question. Then you have the aesthetics of representation, where a lot of the time we feel representation must refer to ethnicity. This is how we think of it, not necessarily everybody else. But we're very concerned with representations of that nature, okay? So that it comes, I'm in the dance world, so I see that all the time with like national performances or whatever. They must have an African dance, an Indian dance, maybe a Chinese dance, a so-and-so dance, right? To represent the culture, the ethnicities, not so much the dance, the art form, but just to make sure to represent the ethnicity. It's a concern that I see coming up over and over again, okay? That we must have these things. Now, these two companies are Susan Mohib's company and Nirtanjali. They're both colleagues of mine. They're beautiful dancers. And most of the people who come onto the stage for those types of things are beautiful dancers, but it is, in part, some kind of representation of, or aesthetics of representation. So too with the African-oriented dances as well. Do you want to break that? Do you want to subscribe to that? Those are the choices you have to make in your own presentation. Chris Cozier is the father of Maya Cozier. He's a very prominent contemporary visual artist. And he gifted me this drawing where, because I was doing a lot of work on whining and its origins, et cetera, and we had these discussions about it. And his daughter also danced. Maya also used to dance. So on one side, you have the very strict European, very austere ballet, and on the other side is the jamming, right? And it's like a blackboard because he uses the trope of the blackboard to talk about colonial impositions of what we should think of ourselves as. So that the blackboard is telling you that the thing on the left is dance, but the thing on the right is worthlessness, right? And it's not worth anything. And of course, it's a tongue-in-cheek thing about it, of course. But again, it's the aesthetics of representation. This is another colleague of mine, Dave Williams, who was, for his 50th birthday, he wanted to do a piece that talked about aging, because that's another type of representation. Because there are some schools of thought that say, well, after you reach a certain age, you're a has-been. And there's some schools of thought that says, well, you only begun to live. Okay? But in most societies, people over a certain age are considered unable to do certain things. So he was contesting that, and he was contending with it at the same time. So that's another set of, so he's looking at himself in the mirror, trying to establish what is what. It was part of a piece that he did. This one, you may know, it is by Patricia Muhammad. Oops, what happened there? Oh, I went back to 4. How did I do that? Coolie Pink and Green. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It was done, I think, in 2009. Let me see if I can just play it and see. This is a long trailer.
Daughter, this is your inheritance.
This you'll find a suitable boy, light-colored, with good hair, the right caste, not quite boy.
There is so much in our culture that we don't want to please.
It wasn't as long as I thought. Good. All right, so wrapping up, I just want to give you another exercise to think about. You don't have to do it, but it might be useful. Oh, goodness, that's not where I wanted to go. Let's see. Here's where I wanted to go. Right? Compare, there are 3 films that you could look at in terms of this theme of Afro-Indo. With Coolie Pink and Green, it's this young woman who's been told to marry a light-skinned Indian with a good job, and she wants to do otherwise. Let's put it that way, so you can see that. That film, I'm not sure if it's online, but you could probably access it somehow. And then there's a film that, if my memory serves me correctly, was called Man from Africa, shot in Trinidad and Tobago. But then when it was released, but it was about an interracial sort of story. It was an interracial story where the man was a Calypsonian in Trinidad and the woman was a woman from India. She was not Trinidadian, Indo-Trinidadian. She was from India. And so I think when it was released in India, it was called Girl from India. Go figure. Just saying. So Man from Africa when it was here, and Girl from India when it was released in India. As far as I recall, I may be wrong. And then Another one that talks about the interracial, sort of has an interracial plot is Bazodi. Okay, so you might want to look at that as a comparative thing, because they're also from different eras. I think Man from Africa was 1982, Bazodi was about 8 years ago, and Coolie Pink was a little about 15 years ago. So you'll see on the spectrum how that theme is treated with. Again, the aesthetics of representation. And then to end off, because it's Carnival, you have the aesthetics of confrontation. Okay? You may be familiar with this image. It is from 1888. It's from the Illustrated London News. You can see it, it's all over the internet, you can see it. It's by Melton Pryor, who did I think it's an etching, I don't think it's a drawing, it might be an etching, of Carnival on Frederick Street. So what we suspect he didn't see all these characters at the same time. He probably saw them one by one or whatever, but created this composite of characters that he would have experienced in Trinidad Carnival when he came. And so you see the, what we knew before as the Jab Jab with the kind of clown head on it, the jester's head. You see the baby doll. You see the Jab Molassie on the right-hand side there, etc. You see a dog barking and all kinds of goods. And you see onlookers. You see people looking from the balcony. Some of those balconies are still there. If you go down Frederick Street, you'll see those balconies still there. All right? And so it's this kind of whoosh of energy of Carnival coming to you. It's the same experience, I think, as this. Set in Port of Spain, just as Melton Pryor's was. That scene right there. Similar to the Melton Pryor. Both appropriating the streets of Port of Spain. Right? And that's still a very important part of Carnival. Right? So, hundreds of years apart, 1888, 1997, which is when Blue came out, but the same sensibility, responding to the same aesthetic and cultural sort of impulses. So, and don't think it just stays here, because I took a picture of Charlotte Street, and I took this one off the net. This picture of Brooklyn. So if anybody's ever been to Brooklyn, Yes, it might be in the winter and it's cold, so it's not the same temperature, etc. And even here you can see that the sky is much more muted on the right than it is on the left, because our light is different. But it's that same kind of shops on top of each other, like almost claustrophobic little places that you can go into, little nooks and crannies, etc. So the aesthetic does also translate to other places where where a lot of immigrants go to, Caribbean immigrants or what have you. I would imagine it's the same thing for people who come from Asia. They set up the spaces that are most concentrated with them in the same way that they know from home. And that's natural. It's an immigrant thing to do. But it's just interesting that it also happens for the Caribbean person. So in conclusion, it's just to, this could be a whole semester of discussion about these things. But I would advise you to learn to look, learn to see, right? You can look at something, but you might not see what it really is. See it. What helped me in college was a book called John Berger's Ways of Seeing. Now, in those days, they didn't have YouTube, so I did not know that he also had a TV series, and that's what they made the book from. We had to read the book. So I'm telling you, go on YouTube. They're all there. All the episodes are there of Ways of Seeing, and it will start to give you some kind of idea of how things, what perspective you can take on things, what perspective you can see other people taking on them as well. It's just a way of understanding how people make meaning out of images and out of sounds, etc. Understand the histories of what you're talking about, all right? So the next time you do something with limbo, you know a little bit more about limbo. Always research what you think you know, because you might find something very, very different and very much more in depth than you thought it was. Look at the nuances. Okay, look at the changes. As I said, Damian Makano did not have any cuss words in his promo for God Loves the Fighter. He had plenty of them in the other. Why did that happen? When you look at if you compare the movies that I was suggesting, you compare what differences do you see on the timeline. Look at the changes and sometimes be the change. Send somebody a curveball, right? Make somebody have duck. Doesn't matter, all right? Because you are trying to establish something that is unique to you and that is speaking to you. You can upset the apple cart. Just make sure you know what you're doing. That's fine. And so the bottom line is there's no one way to be a Trinbagonian. So it's not an aesthetic about this is how we are and this is not how we are. There are different shades of everything. There is something that locates us as Trinidad and Tobago people. So there's no one way to be it, but there's maybe a way to feel it, okay? Because of the things that are around us, the lush fauna, the flora, the whatever, all right? So that's it for me. And if you have any questions, I know everybody's tired. I can see it. I'm tired too. I want to eat. I'm telling you that from now. But I'll conclude here. I'll stay for a little while. So if you want to come up and talk to me, you can, because I know it's a little difficult for people to do question and answers at this point. So thank you for coming, and it was a pleasure speaking with you about these things that interest me. Thanks.